Greetings. Welcome to Dr. English's Book Lovers Book Club. I'm Dr. English and I teach English. Today I'm interrupting my regularly scheduled program to do a review of The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson and in honor of Halloween. So this will be posted on Halloween. And I wanted to do some kind of horror book in honor of Halloween. And this is a choice that I made because of the suggestion of my son-in-law, and he loves this book and I love it too. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with Shirley Jackson, but she published this in 1959. She's also the author of The Lottery, which was one of my all-time favorite short stories ever written. And I love her writing, and that story has stayed with me my entire life. I'm sure I read it in high school. I don't remember when, if I was a freshman or sophomore or junior or senior, but I distinctly remember that story. And this book, The Haunting of Hill House, has won several awards when it was first published. But it's the story of Dr. Montague, who wants to do a study of like parapsychology in this very famous haunted house called Hill House. And he tries to get people from all over to come to Hill House. He sends out letters, and two people decide to come, and that is Theodora, who is like a medium, and Eleanor, who has experience with poltergeists. And it's kind of somewhat told omnisciently, but omnisciently in some ways through Eleanor's point of view. So you kind of get the sense of the fear. That's one thing that she does really well, is that she really understands like psychological elements of fear. And that's the part of this book that makes it so intriguing, is that, and that's true in The Lottery too, that she really has a whole community that has this sense of fear about the lottery for a good purpose. I won't give spoilers on The Lottery in case you have not read it or had been exposed to it, but he's very good at that too. And from this book, it's more about I know it's supposed to be omniscient because he's using like third person as Eleanor thinks this, but most of the story is Eleanor's perception of what's going on. And it's really he does that with each of the characters, with Theodora and Luke and Dr. Montague. And by the way, Luke is the person who is Luke Sanderson, and the Sanderson family has acquired the Hill House after the Cranes, who first built it, and built it in a way that it's a very strangely shaped, and it's just the connections between the room are very unusual. So it's a very strangely built home. But the Sandersons are the people who bought it, and he is one of the Sandersons that will inherit this house in some point. And so Dr. Montague wants to have people come to the house to see and record. He's doing it as a scientific study. He wants to record observations about how people react when they're in the house, and keep a record of any kind of haunting kind of behaviors, so to speak. And so what you really find out is that each of them has a different experience, but yet Eleanor's experience is quite a bit different than the rest, and her thinking is a little bit different, and it sometimes jumps around. It's like sometimes I had to go back and say, what is going on here? In Eleanor's mind, it's like, she just goes from one thing to another, and it's like you always have to kind of go back and look. It's like, wait a minute, what did she say? And so in that regard, I think she's intentionally trying to show the state of mind of Eleanor while she's at the Hill House, because Eleanor she took care of her mother while her mother was very ill, and then she ends up living with her sister, and she's arguing with her sister about this car, and she's going to take the car, and it's half hers, and her sister's planning to go on a vacation, and she's like, no, you can't do that, we're going to go on vacation. But she takes the car anyway, and has instructions from Dr. Montague on how to get to Hill House. So she really wants to express some independence, and this is her choice. I think a lot of us would think, well, I would do something else to express my independence and not go to a haunted house to be a person who's studying that along with Dr. Montague. But that's the whole, the beginning, kind of the plot of the story. And then these four people are in the house to make observations. And so it starts off there. I won't give anything away, but there are experiences in the house, and those experiences have a profound effect on Eleanor. Even though Eleanor, says that she wants to go with Theodora, she really cares about Theodora, and Theodora's like, no, you have your life, I have my life. And I found that was intriguing. I thought there were elements of this relationship between Eleanor and Theodora that I found interesting for writing it in 1959. And then I found somewhere that someone had written something about how Jackson really was one of the first ones to write about queer experiences. And because it was really clear to me, I was like, what is going on here? And then I found something else that somebody commented on that, and I thought, oh, I wasn't just, it was pretty, it wasn't just me thinking, but it's, others have noted that about this book, The Haunting of Hill House. So it's like the ending of the story is just like, oh my goodness. So I'm not going to give it away, but it is like, if you're not used to this kind of developing, is taking the time to develop this story, you might find it a little tedious to read. We're not used to reading things like that. Most of the stuff I've been reading has been a real quick read, young adult fiction. And this, it takes a little bit more stamina for you to stick with the story, to think, because you want to find out, well, what actually happens. And so I'm going to read a passage now from this. And it's about one of the things that actually happened in the house with the Crane family. And so here is this portion I'm going to read. Oddly enough, sympathy around the village was almost entirely with the younger sister, perhaps because the companion, once a village girl, was now lady of the manor. The villagers believed, and still believe, I think, that the younger sister was defrauded of her inheritance by a scheming young woman. They did not believe that she would murder her friend, you see, but they were delighted to believe that she was dishonest, certainly because they were capable of dishonesty themselves when opportunity arose. Well, gossip is always a bad enemy. When the poor creature killed herself, Eleanor, shocked into speech, half rose. She had to kill herself? You mean, was there another way of escaping her tormentor? She certainly did not seem to think so. It was accepted locally that she had chosen suicide because her guilty conscience drove her to it. I am more inclined to believe that she was one of those tenacious, unclever young women who can hold on desperately to what they believe is their own, but cannot withstand mentally a constant nagging persecution. She had certainly no weapons to fight back against the younger sister's campaign of hatred. Her own friends in the village had been turned against her, and she seems to have been maddened by the convictions that locks and bolts could not keep out the enemy who stole into her house at night. She should have gone away, Eleanor said, left the house and run as far as she could go. In effect, she did. I really think the poor girl was hated to death. She hanged herself, by the way. Gossip says she hanged herself from the turret on the tower, but when you have a house like Hill House with a tower and a turret, gossip would hardly allow you to hang yourself anywhere else. After her death, the house passed legally into the hands of the Sanderson family, who were cousins of hers and in no way as vulnerable to the persecutions of the younger sister, who must have been a little demented herself by that time. I heard from Mrs. Sanderson that when the family, it would have been her husband's parents, first came to see the house, the younger sister showed up to abuse them, standing on the road to howl at them as they went by, and found herself packed right off to the local police station. And that seems to be the end of the younger sister's part in the story. From the day the first Sanderson sent her packing to the brief notice of her death a few years later, she seemed to have spent her time brooding silently over her wrongs, but far away from the Sandersons. Oddly enough, in all her ranting, she insisted always on one point. She would not, come into this house at night to steal for any other reason. So that is an excerpt that tells a little bit about the Crane family and the history of why it may possibly be haunted, because one of the young women from the village had hung herself because people had hated her for what she did. So in most of my videos, I actually talk a little bit about, for my pre-service teachers in English language arts, I talk a little bit about whether I teach this book, and I would, absolutely. Like around Halloween, absolutely, I would definitely teach this book. I think you might have to do it very slowly. You might have to do, you could probably do, what is it called when you just cut it up a little bit and everybody reads a little bit section of it. I did that with Jane Eyre, where, a group of people read a certain amount of page, like a jigsaw puzzle of jigsawing the book. And then everybody can come together and try to figure out what's going on after they have read their piece of the jigsaw. It's a lot of fun to do in the classroom, and I would probably do that. I would jigsaw this book, and then because it's a mystery kind of a horror kind of book. So yeah, I definitely would. I would definitely think about teaching this, and if not, you could do it as a book club or a novel panel where a group of kids talk about it, or you could do it as a literature circle. But I think it would be a lot of fun to do it as a whole class, or in small groups. So I highly recommend it. It's not, I mean, it might take a little longer just because of the language of it is not as quickly paced as some of the more modern books. But I definitely think it's really a great read for Halloween. So happy Halloween. I'm happy to have done a special edition for Halloween. So have a great time. Be safe out there. See you next time. Bye.